Hello and welcome to the Sunday Shale Show. My name is Mike Chadsey and today I'm joined by COO of EnerVest, Mark Hauser. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. Real quick, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your education.
Well, I'm a petroleum engineer from Texas A&M University. I graduated in 1984 and followed that up a few years later with an MBA from Southern Methodist University. My background is mostly with large independent oil and gas companies until I left in 1999 to come to EnerVest.
Okay, very good. And speaking of EnerVest, tell us a little bit about maybe the history of the company or maybe what's going on here in Ohio with EnerVest.
Well, EnerVest is 20 years old this year,
Okay.
and we're primarily a private equity company. We raise private equity. We use it to go out and buy mature oil and gas fields. And over the years here in Ohio, we've acquired about $600 million worth of fields.
Okay.
And fortunately for us, it's given us a lot of good base production, but it's also allowed us to participate in really one of the latest shale plays, which is the Utica, where we have about 700,000 acres net to the EnerVest family of companies.
Oh, okay, very good. Now, I've heard something referred to as a JV. Can you tell us a little bit about what a JV is?
Well, a JV is a joint venture. Typically,
venture,
that's where you put together different companies that have different strengths to all go towards one cause. And the particular JV that gets mentioned in the Utica for us has been our joint venture with Chesapeake and Total.
Okay.
Where about a year and a half ago, Chesapeake and EnerVest marketed some acreage, and Total came in, and their interest was learning more about the shales and participating with a proven operator like Chesapeake.
Okay.
And so we're in that together with them, and it's really the dominant driller right now in the Utica Shale is Chesapeake,
Sure.
Mostly through this joint venture.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Sounds like a good partnership that you each bring something a little different to the team and yet still be able to produce.
Yeah, I know for sure EnerVest is learning a lot in terms of massive shale drilling activities that is a benefit of being partnered with Chesapeake.
Okay.
And we're also bringing some things to the table too with our existing 8,000 wells that we have here in the state, and our 250 people we have that work here in Ohio bring a lot of benefit to it as
Oh,
well.
that's good. Well, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about some of the things that EnerVest does, maybe some of the best practices you use in the different plays around the country, but maybe particularly here in Ohio, there's a lot of conversation about how do we protect our water, how do we protect our air, how do we protect our land. What are some of the key things that EnerVest does to make sure that you are following all the rules and regulations in place to make sure that you're doing what you need to do to produce energy but keep health and human safety protected?
Well, fortunately for EnerVest, we're in many of the basins around the country, and many of the more mature basins where there's been time put into developing the proper regulatory procedures and the proper practices. We've taken a lot of our practices, like in the Austin Chalk and in the Barnett Shale, and brought them here to Ohio. Also, the Ohio Oil and Gas Association has been a really good advocate for the industry and working to put in the proper regulations here in Ohio. So that's all worked really well, and again, a lot of the practices that used to be maybe regionalized and now become more national through just interaction of various oil and gas associations and various companies. So really we're doing a lot of the same type things we've been doing in Texas, and we've been doing in Louisiana and other states for years in Ohio.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That makes sense. Let me ask you this. Let's say I'm just John Q. Public, but I know you, Mark, and I know you know a little bit about this industry, and I would come up to you one day and say, hey, I've got some concerns, and I don't understand everything I hear about hydraulic fracturing and fracking. How would you be able to explain that to me?
Well, I would first say that hydraulic fracturing has been going on since 1948.
Okay.
And the primary concern seems to be around potential damage to water aquifers, freshwater aquifers at shallow levels. And there's been no evidence ever of any one frac that has penetrated a freshwater aquifer.
Okay.
So that's the main thing. And then statistically, again, there have been so many wells that have been fracked with minimal problems at all, any sort of operational problems on the surface. So generally, it's a very safe practice. Statistically, it's proven to be extremely safe.
Okay.
So we're very comfortable with the
And so there's
operation.
been no documented cases of any water contamination
None.
associated with that. Well, that's good to hear, and that's something we often talk about as well, too.
Right.
Talk about how after everything has been produced and you've started to reclaim the land, after a well pad has started to be reclaimed, tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, obviously during the initial drilling and completion activities, there's a good bit of space that's needed, sometimes up to 6 acres to drill and complete a well. Once the well is drilled and the hydraulic fracturing equipment goes away, the drilling rig goes away, there's less of a need for acreage. And so over time, we're able to shrink down the size of the well pad needed to where sometimes they can shrink by as much as 50% once you get into the production activity.
Okay.
Now that also depends on the number of wells you choose to put on a pad. One of the real benefits we're seeing is through multi-well drilling on a single pad, we're able to reduce the overall footprint across, say, a county of overall well activity, where you might have half the amount of acreage exposed, or even less than that, that you would have through conventional, even horizontal drilling that you would get through multi-pad
Oh,
drilling.
that's good. So in the end, it's kind of more about less surface disturbance.
Correct.
So and in the end, you're trying to make sure that you leave it the way you found it.
That's right, and there's so much more benefit to having the multi-pad drilling in terms of pipeline rights and the way you have fewer of those.
Sure.
You have fewer needs to drive around with your pumpers and the trucks. They can be more efficient in their routes and everything else.
Okay, well, very good. Well, Mark, as we wrap up here, is there anything you'd like to share about anything that's happening currently with EnerVest in Ohio, or maybe anything that's coming down the pike you'd like to share with us?
Well, I think most folks know that EnerVest isn't mostly an acquisition and divestiture company, and we mostly deal in mature assets. And we're actually in the process of marketing some of our acreage here in Ohio to some other folks who may really be more equipped to handle the significant long-term development of the play. That being the case, EnerVest is very active here in Ohio with the acreage it's retaining in Ohio, and also through its participation in some midstream activities and its conventional production activities
As well, too. Do you have a headquarters here in Ohio somewhere?
We actually have an office here in Hartville.
Okay, over in Stark County?
Over in Stark County, that's
Okay.
right. And we have several other field offices around the state. Again, as I mentioned, we have about 250 people here in the state.
250 people, that are just EnerVest employees?
EnerVest employees here in the state.
Okay, do you expect that number to grow?
Reasonably.
Okay.
And again, as I mentioned, we're not going to be the major operator in terms of Utica development, so there'll be some growth of that.
Okay.
There will be significant growth by other companies here as the play really matures as we move into 2013 and 2014.
Okay, well, great. Well, Mark, thanks for sitting down with us today, and thanks for sharing us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the company. And this is very exciting times in Ohio, and I know we're very much in the infancy of this. I think the analogy was if
Absolutely.
we're playing a baseball game, what inning would we be in?
I'd say we're on about the second pitch.
Second pitch of the first inning, so
Yes.
very early in the play. Okay. Well, Mark, thanks again for your time, and I appreciate it. And for more information, visit us at eidohio.org. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mike.